You've probably heard this story before, even if you don't know the name attached to it. A woman is murdered outside her apartment building late at night, and dozens of her neighbors hear her screaming for help. Not one of them calls the police. 38 witnesses, 38 people who did nothing. It became one of the most famous stories in psychology, taught in classrooms for 60 years as proof of something dark about human nature. But the real story is stranger than the myth that grew out of it, because the case that taught the world about human indifference was built on a story that wasn't fully true. This is the story of Kitty Genovese and the science she accidentally created. It was March 13, 1964, in the Kew Gardens neighborhood of Queens, New York. Kitty Genovese was 28 years old, driving home from work in the early hours of the morning. She parked near her apartment building and started walking toward the entrance. A man named Winston Mosley followed her and attacked her with a knife near a streetlight. She screamed. A neighbor heard her and shouted down from a window, and Mosley ran off. But he came back minutes later, found her again. She had crawled toward the back of her building, badly wounded, and attacked her a second time, out of view of the street. That second attack is the one that killed her. The whole event took roughly half an hour. 2 weeks later, the New York Times ran a headline that would define this case forever. 38 witnesses who saw a murder and didn't call the police. The article painted a picture of an entire apartment block watching coldly from their windows as a woman was stabbed to death below and simply going back to bed. It became a sensation, a symbol of everything people feared about anonymous city life. And that's exactly why it spread so fast, not because it was accurate, but because it confirmed what people already believed. Decades later, researchers went back and reinvestigated. What they found was messier and far more human than 38 cold-blooded witnesses. The attack happened in 2 separate locations at 2 different times, with windows shut against the cold. Most people who heard anything caught only a few seconds of a scream in the middle of the night, the kind of sound that gets explained away as a couple arguing, not a murder in progress. Only a handful of people had a clear enough view to understand what was actually happening, and even among them, some did act. One neighbor's shout is what interrupted the first attack. At least one person did call the police. The image of 38 people passively watching an entire murder unfold, feeling nothing, simply isn't supported by the fuller record. It was a dramatic simplification, because 38 witnesses did nothing makes a much better headline than several people heard something ambiguous and weren't sure what it was. But here's the part that makes this story genuinely important. 2 psychologists, Latané and Darley, read about the Genovese case and set out to test one question. Are people really less likely to help when more witnesses are present? In their experiments, they staged a fake emergency, the sound of someone having a seizure, heard by a participant alone in a room. When people believed they were the only witness, most of them acted immediately. But when they believed other people were also listening in, the response rate dropped sharply. It wasn't that they didn't care, many were visibly distressed, but knowing others were also aware of the emergency made each person less likely to be the one who stepped in. They called this diffusion of responsibility. When you're the only witness, the responsibility sits entirely on you. When you're one of many, that responsibility quietly gets divided up until it can disappear almost completely. Nobody consciously decides not to help. Everyone just assumes someone else already has it handled. This effect has been replicated for 60 years across countries and situations. It's real. So here's the strange twist. The bystander effect is a genuine, well-tested science. But the case that inspired it, still cited in textbooks today, was itself distorted by exaggerated reporting. One of psychology's most useful discoveries was built on a foundational myth, and yet the concept that story pointed toward turned out to be completely true anyway. The lazy lesson here is people don't care. That's not what the science says, and it's not what happened to Kitty Genovese. The real lesson is more useful. The problem usually isn't a lack of caring, it's a lack of clarity about who's responsible in the moment. And that's something you can fix. If you're ever in an emergency with other people around, don't shout into the crowd, point at one person directly. You, in the red jacket, call 911. The moment responsibility is assigned to one specific person, the diffusion breaks, and they almost always act. Kitty Genovese's death changed psychology forever, just not for the reason most people were told. The city failed her because 38 people watched and shrugged. It failed her because in the dark and the cold, almost nobody understood what they were actually hearing. And the one clear piece of science that came out of her tragedy is now something you can use to make sure it never happens around you. Have you ever been in the situation where you assumed someone else would step in? Tell me what happened in the comments.